My guest tonight, Thomas and Ferrario, has been investigating the Marley, just as active, if not more active, than Skinwalker Ranch. Join us in 5 minutes. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, honors, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own back dash and pixie dust. Turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Let me get my light on here. The internet's kind of acting wonky again, so if stop in the middle and reschedule the show, but hopefully it holds up. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host, hopefully for the next hour. Owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. Yeah, there it goes. And it's because it's the holiday. Everybody's home. They're on the web looking at something. So fortunately, I'm going to have to reschedule it, but yikes. We could try to do this. I don't know how bad the cutbacks are. Try it, see what happens, and then maybe if it gets really bad, we'll have to cut off and not do it because we're going to be sliding it out here. The California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We are 45 strong up and down the state. To you, it might take us a couple hours because the state's huge, but we can get to you. As you can see, I've got my Santa Aloha season, got my Christmas tree back here, and starting to get into it. Decorating my front yard. Been working all day. Off and on in between. Anyway, we also have affiliates in Oregon, Washington, Nevada, and Hawaii. So if you have any issues there. How to find us? Facebook. We are also on Twitter under Cal Haunts. You can get us on Instagram under Ghosty Gal, all lowercase, just me, us. You can find us over at TikTok, and that is under California Haunts. I think I got everybody. That's the way to find us. And if you're watching from Facebook, okay, we'll give it a couple more minutes. If you're watching from Facebook and you like what you see, you know by liking and here because we're looking for followers. I'm always looking for followers. But anyway, I will try to get the show started. Okay, guys, I'm going to bug off. This is not happening tonight. Happen tonight. What I'm going to try and do is do a quick shutdown and see if I get back in. I'm going to crash the internet. Here. All right, I'm going to crash it down. Okay, let's see what happens now. There's so many people online in this neighborhood. I've actually got an upgrade for a new modem and everything that's on its way. But there's so many people online in this neighborhood. It's insane. Just insane. But anyway, maybe this will stabilize it a little bit. We'll find out. I haven't disappeared yet. That's a good sign. So let me get my banner going. And we'll bring in our guest. My guest tonight is an investigator. And he has discovered, along with somebody else, another investigator, this place called Marley Woods. And they're spook lights, just like like some of the ghost lights people talk about. I've actually had an experience with ghost lights. We were doing this case up in not Placerville, but Camino, and this client came out and said, "You have to go out and look over the river." And I said, "What river?" He says, "Well, the gorge is right there where the river is, and go check it out because there's these ghost lights that float out above the river out there." And I mean, there's no way anybody could do this. This is like in the middle of nowhere. The roads are miles away, and sure enough, we were able to see a couple ghost lights out there, and it was over the river canyon. It was crazy, And the only thing that he thought of was that there was a car down there that looked like it had crashed, and he thought maybe it was those people that were out there. But that's my experience with ghost lights. So let me bring our guest on, and let's hope. It looks like we're pretty stable right now, and see how things go. All right, here we go. Good evening, sir.
Hello, good evening. Glad to be here.
Sorry about that. Sometimes the internet gets unstable. Lots of people on the same internet in my neighborhood.
No, I'm used to that. I'll tell you, it follows me around.
Well, tell me about you.
Okay, I'll make a quick, short story here. I got involved in ufology at a young age and contacted Walt Andrus, the founder of MUFON, on a 4-hour phone call. I live in a rural area, and I did my own research since 1969. And the gentleman was gracious enough to invite me to be in MUFON and make me a state director, assistant state director, and section director. And then he gave me the phone number to call for the state director at that time, Bruce Whitteman, which was a good friend of mine. We formed a close relationship, and we just lost Bruce this year. He passed away. And but anyway, I got involved with MUFON, and Bruce Whitteman got me some proper training with a retired Air Force colonel named Jim Cross, and he taught me the proper way to do things in MUFON and investigate. So, and then I got hooked up with Ted Phillips, and that's history. And of course, Ted Phillips is the world-renowned physical trace expert. Worked with Dr. Alan Hynek, from Project Blue Book, and so I had a great training and couldn't have bought that kind of schooling anywhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell me what's up with the Marley Woods. I know there's spook lights out there, and like I said, I've seen spook lights firsthand here in California. So tell me about the Marley Woods.
Yeah, Marley Woods. I know your viewers are more familiar with, of course, Skinwalker Ranch, and for a short time we were affiliated with the original owner, Robert Bigelow. We worked with one another, and I do know the director of the new Skinwalker show is a good friend of mine, and but we'll go into that. And we had some things planned, and but Marley Woods has everything virtually Skinwalker has. It had cryptid activity, light ball activity, an unseen force, we called it, which would knock down steel gates, break log chains, agroglyphs, which are called crop circles. Just you name it, we had it out there. The light beam phenomena, which injured people, myself included in that. And we had cattle mutilations to the degree that I have a good friend, Chris O'Brien, I'm sure you've probably heard of, San Luis Valley. Chris is a good friend of mine, and but we had horse mutilations. So we're just parallel, and through Ted Phillips working with Alan Hynek, they worked as a team with Jacques Vallée, and Jacques Vallée actually spent time and worked with us out in Marley with Douglas Trumbull, the special effects master, 2001, Close Encounters, and on I could tell you. Stan T. Freeman was a friend of Ted's. He worked with us. So, and Jacques Vallée actually said he saw a higher potential for strangeness in Marley Woods than at Skinwalker. So that's saying quite a bit.
What makes an area, I mean, I know it's hard to say this, but why is the area so attractive to extraterrestrials and other paranormal stuff?
That, I will tell you, drove Ted Phillips crazy. He looked into it, the topography, geologically, native culture. We could find nothing that set Marley Woods apart from any other location in Missouri. And I will say it's in Missouri for a long time. We wouldn't even divulge that, but it's two ranches, one comprised of 1,200 acres, one comprised of around 750 acres, and two different property owners, I might add. And so that's a lot of real estate in a remote area, lock gated community. You're dealing with off of small paved roads, gravel roads, and the roads we worked on were dirt roads. So that eliminates any interference and made it a pristine research area. So I wished I could tell you what set it apart. I can't do that, but I will tell you one thing, that now, the time we live in now, that I am very good friends with the current state director, Debbie Ziegelmeyer, which you may have heard her name before. She's been on other TV shows, and she's the state director and board member of MUFON. And she has informed me that there is actually 3 new sites in Missouri approaching the highness the strangeness of Marley Woods. And I have another state director that's a friend of mine. And I worked on with Ted a project Moonshaft, which I can go into later, but that's in Slovakia, and I have people there I contact. And I will tell you that this phenomenon is growing worldwide right now. So I do believe the dimensional barriers are weakening, and you're seeing a lot more of this coming through right now.
Yeah. Well, I've always, it's been discussions I've had with psychics on my team. That veil is thinning. Between us and the paranormal. So maybe that's what's going on. All this activity's coming, and maybe a lot of it too is people, because they see they see you on TV or whoever on TV talking about this stuff. It makes people more aware of the stuff going on around them.
Yeah, for a long time, I just wanted to throw in that Ted Phillips, my mentor, was a nuts and bolts man. He did the physical trace. He did soil compaction test. He was a nuts and bolts man, as I was in the beginning. I wanted to do structured craft. I didn't want to get into paranormal or cryptid. But Ted went where the data led him, and I also did. And Dr. Ellen Hynek was that way towards the end. And I will tell you that, as Ted said, that Alan said that this is the idea these are aliens coming from Alpha Centauri is much too simplistic, that it is in the paranormal realm. It's all phenomena that is frequency based and driven, and the dimensional aspect of it concerns it all. And we dealt with a lot of paranormal at Marley and poltergeist activity. And so it was a learning experience. But I will tell you that the people I worked with, that the experts in this field above my pay grade, all come to one determination that this all stems from one source. The structured craft, paranormal, everything it's dimensionally based, and it's all related. So that is one commonality that we came away with, and they proved.
That's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And tell me about you just mentioned poltergeist activity. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's when we worked out in Marley, we never knew what we were going to be hit with from day to day. If it would be a cattle mutilation, light ball activity, paranormal activity, and we were so fortunate, like I said, to have Jacques Vallée and Douglas Trumbull out there together at one time, and Douglas had a very expensive piece of camera equipment he put in one room, and put it to the north window because it was the weather was bad outside, and the property owner locked the cabin door, and this was on a very heavy piece of camera equipment that he had made, motion activated and EMF activated, and the whole thing weighed about 75, 80 pounds, put it on a locked tripod, and the property owner locked the door. The next morning we went in to look at what it had captured, and Douglas actually got mad at this, wanted to know who was messing with him. The camera had been turned 30 degrees away from the window. Whoa. So, what does that? And that was the poltergeist type activity that we had. And we experienced things personally. When we would sleep in, I myself, things in the middle of the night would wake you, shake you physically, and you'd wake up. And myself, I had an overwhelming just sense of euphoria, and get up and go out on the deck and expect to see the mothership. And there was nothing there, and it would turn to depression almost. And we documented that, and several people out there, and it was truly a paranormal events we had. And so in cryptid activity we had was everything from skinwalkerish, as you can imagine, hooded wolf-like figures, and when these things cross the dimensional boundaries, they are as real as you and I are. We took physical trace. We had tracks we poured cast in. We had 16-inch white long hair. that we did microscopy on and some crude DNA work in the day, and they came back no known match. And this was a critter that the property owner, who could weigh cattle on the hoof, estimate within pounds. They estimated this at 300 to 400 pounds, this animal. And so it just was a wide range of cryptids out there, some Bigfoot sightings, and some DNA work done out there along other places. So it just, you name it, we had it out there.
That's incredible. And the owner, how did you guys find out about this? Did the landowner get a hold of you guys, or how'd that work?
Yeah. And around, I would say around 91, the property owner reached out. He was wanting answers because this goes back 3 generations that we could tell in one family that was there. We suspect it went into Native American culture, but there's no presence there of them now. And so we can't prove that, but we truly do believe it went back as far as recorded history we could find. And the property owner wanted answers. So the only thing he could find was, again, the Mutual UFO Network, which had its origin in Missouri, actually. Before it was the Mutual UFO Network, it was the Missouri UFO Network. And Walt Andrus and John Schuessler started that, and they were engineers in the space program. And but anyway, the property owner at Site-1 reached out to MUFON, and Bruce Whitteman, which was my close friend that just passed away, he knew Ted Phillips, and at that point, Ted wasn't in MUFON. Ted went in and out of MUFON whenever he had time, and but Bruce asked Ted for a personal favor if Ted could get out there and investigate this occurrence out at Marley Woods, and he was pretty busy, and he kind of put it on the back burner for a while, and he started reading the cases. And I will tell you, the property owner in Site-1 is a prolific. He's a great writer. He take logs and photographs. And when Ted started reading some of his logs, he got out there within a week and started investigating this. And that's how it started back in the 90s. So, and it went on, and it had peak times when the activities would peak, and then there would be lull periods when it would go down, but there was always some activity there. But that's how Ted got involved in it and how it became known.
You know, there's something out there that could mutilate cattle. Were you guys a little bit leery about, being out there in the field?
Yeah, we never put a finger on exactly what was doing this. We had, and it gets very graphic. We had one horse-born incident where a man's prize horse was literally in a barn one morning. He checked on it, he fed it some sugar, and he goes back. And it's a long story, but basically he was within sight of the barn, and within 30 minutes, he went back. As he checked the fence line, he went back by the barn and saw the gate ajar. He goes in the barn and finds his horse, like he described it, as it was in a slaughterhouse. There are pieces of horse flesh all over the inside of the barn, as if it exploded, blood all over. And we got out there around 7 weeks later. We were trying to get a presence out there, but we got out there whenever we could. And but no known explanation for this. And there's been deer in the area found, 13 deer on a hilltop found, and the vet examined it, not lightning, or couldn't put his finger on any cause, but 13 deer laying there dead. So, and very graphic horse and cattle mutilations in the area. So, and we more or less just came, and there is an intelligence out there, I will tell you. One thing we logged, and we knew, we dealt with it. There's an intelligence out there, and we actually feel that a lot of this was done to use fear as a tool to manipulate people and the ranchers out there. And so that's the only thing we could come up, any kind of an answer for this. But it gets involved in that, and it just, And I will say, I don't know if you're familiar or not with UFO Witness and Ben Hansen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if you knew, we filmed an episode of that with Ben and Melissa Tittle out there in Marley.
Very
And
cool. I'll have to check it out.
I don't know if you had a chance to see that or not.
I haven't yet. No.
It's the episode is called the Nordic in the Cube.
Okay.
Nordics in the Cube episode. And so I will tell you it's worth watching. Ben and Melissa were great to work with, and I've known Ben for years, and he followed Ted Phillips for years before the show. And so we knew each other before we did that episode. But we had very dramatic things happen with them on that episode. And everything you'll see in that episode is real, and it happened out there. But I will tell you, from the time Ben and Melissa got to the property, they were apprehensive. They pulled onto the property. They started having equipment failures. Ben and Melissa, as you'll see in other episodes, they synchronized their watches. And Melissa had a new watch, a really nice watch, and got onto the property. Her new watch went dead. She told Ben, she checked her synchronization with Ben. It was dead. Her watch was dead. Camera packs were going dead. And there truly is, like Skinwalker, the original people. Mm-hmm. When you interject strangers on the property, the presence out there, the intelligence doesn't like it. And I just might add that the property owner, which was a man in his 80s, I've known for years, a close friend, 2 weeks before we went out to film that episode, he calls me up and he says, well, Tom, he said, the water tank just blew out on site 2 and 3. We won't have any running water or restrooms for anybody. And then a day before we were going to go out there, they had an unusual, he'd never seen a rain like he had that night. It virtually almost washed out all the dirt roads, which had never happened to that degree. Mm-hmm. And he asked me if we wanted to try it yet. And I said, yeah, I believe we do. And so we got out there, and it was just a great task not to get vehicles from being stuck and get around. But they felt a presence on the property when we got out there. The property owner wanted to film with us that night, and he got sick. He had to go home. He got weak, which was a big disappointment. So that hit us. And then Melissa, we start filming, and my hearing is bad from years of working in a machine shop. And but Melissa picked up on it first and tapped Ben. All the night sounds, insects, everything at one point. And we got that on film out there. Went dead, and we all felt like something could happen at any time. And then I went with Ben, and he had a very expensive piece of thermal imaging equipment. We got up in a deer stand, and Ben asked me, he said, well, I got something right now. And he said, I can't tell if that's an animal or, and from my experience with the light balls that we had in the past in Marley, I said, well, no, Ben, that's spherical and it's off the ground. And he said, oh, yeah, you're right. And so we picked up on this light ball that was forming, and we tracked it. And then his several $1,000 piece of thermal imaging equipment just shut off in midstream. And I asked Ben, I said, has he got a habit of doing this, Ben? And he said, no. And it came back on, and he got it for a brief instant and pointed with a laser pointer for his team on the ground to go after this thing, this light ball. And then as it dissipated, or like it went back through the barrier. And I had wished that over the years, Ted and I had that piece of equipment, because I thought how many times we might have monitored or seen this light ball, because you couldn't, Ben had thermal imaging, I had night vision, and the crew had some night vision and just the naked eye. And the only thing we could pick this up when it formed was with the thermal imaging unit. So I really feel over the years, had we had that, we could have seen this thing. I don't know how many times it might have been around us that we couldn't pick up on, So, but that night it just went on and on from there. I had a piece of equipment. Because I always felt it was, if I brought anybody on the ranch, because microwave energy was what we felt did the damage to people out there and animals again. And I had a piece of equipment that was just focused on that spectrum, microwave energy. And it had a visual cue, green, yellow to red, and audible cue. And 3 times in the middle of a field that night at 3 a.m, this thing went off into the danger zone. And I told Ben several times that night and Melissa that I really feel that this intelligence is letting us know, it's monitoring us. And with all my heart, I know it's letting us know what it's capable of doing, because I had seen it, damage, myself included, health effects on people. But so it is an intelligence that's out there when it comes through. And, we can go into that realm, which I've learned a lot about, but it's just, they really had a learning experience, I will tell you.
I'm thinking about Missouri, because Missouri's a little bit like some of the areas we have in California, where there's a lot of caves, and then you got a lot of limestone, and then you got water down there, and it's raising the EMF levels. And you think that could be part of this, or you think maybe someone is coming to maybe look for minerals and whatnot?
We examined that. There are no cave openings on the properties. There is a couple one in particular, large cave complex we found, and we explored that. And we got down in there and we had our equipment. We didn't get any strange readings, never had any activity in this large cave. We did feel that this cave complex could extend underneath Marley. So we can't rule that out. But we never came up with anything concrete out of that. And of course, Missouri is a cave state, so you're never far from a cave in Missouri.
No, absolutely not. That's why I was thinking about that, because I know a lot of it, because you say, certain times of the year, a lot more happens than other times of the year. That happens up in our gold country as well, because we do have that limestone in those caves, and the water is rushing. And when the water is rushing is when they get more paranormal activity, because obviously that makes the EMF go up and all that.
Yeah, it's but we couldn't come away with anything concrete on that. And but Marley Woods, I will tell you, and that goes into, I've been covering now, been going into with some friends of mine that I still do research with, and through Bruce Whitteman, Bruce and I had worked with a disclosure project, actually, with some people in the government at one point. And I will tell you, it got very involved, and a lot almost came out of that. But I truly believe the people and contacts I have, that so many people ask me about disclosure with this type of activity and structured craft. And I always have to tell them that through the people I've known personally and been fortunate to be with, there's an event called the false flag event that they have the same structured event. Basically, it's going to occur, and the activity paranormal is, everything's coming to a peak. And basically what that is, at some point we felt that there's going to be an event when mankind is at its lowest or worst. And of course, watching the news nowadays, I don't think we're too far from that event. But what's going to come across, I will tell you, is the same intelligence. And this is, a lot of ufologists like to throw rocks at me and in our group at times. They don't want to go there. But we just truly believe that what's perceived as aliens, and they're not even honest about that. We truly believe this is an intelligence that's dimensional, that's coming across, and it's not from Alpha Centauri, as Hynek said. That's too simplistic a view. Now, that doesn't mean that it can't be interplanetary, but as I had it explained to me, it's dimensionally based, that you have to go through the dimensional portals, which we had 3 at Marley, we felt. And Ted captured things on photographs of things. coming in and out of that. And so, and even, I will just tell you at this point that, of course, I've said this recently, that Stanton T. Freeman was a friend of mine, and he kind of broke my heart. In early day, I was a Star Trek, I was a Trekkie fan when I was young, and Stan and I would talk about that, and he'd tell me, he said, well, Tom, he said, it can't be done like that. The physics, that's not practical. And I would tell him, well, why do you think that, Stan? Or why? And he would tell me, he said, look at it this way. He said, the physics involved, he said, to take a solid object the size of a pea to attain light speed would take the combined energy output of the Earth for 100 years. So and that broke my heart when he laid, and I'm not going to argue with a nuclear physicist, believe me.
No.
But he said, when you go dimensionally and you cross that boundary, you can go interplanetary in that regards. But the physics just don't make sense or not practical on this side to ever attain that kind of speed. And, and I've just got to go with the people I've worked with over the years. And they were great people to work with. And I'm so fortunate. And it goes on and on. I worked with friends with a gentleman named Ray Stanford. I don't know if you've ever heard that name.
I haven't. No, sir.
He wrote a book, Socorro Saucer in the Pentagon Closet. He did the Lonnie Zamora Socorro landing case, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with that. And Ted was there with, Alan Hynek and Ray Stanford were there investigating that. And so I've been exposed to some of the best people, I feel, and been so fortunate. And if I have to put my money on any kind of hypothesis or answers, they are who I'll put my money on. It's.
How big of an area is Marley Woods?
It's actually around 2 miles north and south and 3 miles west and east. And so that's a lot of real estate, At most, our team was comprised of, one time we had 5 people in it out there, but usually it'd usually be down to 3 people or just at times 10 to myself. And when we were working with Bigelow, we'd hoped to get a permanent fixture out there, a permanent presence, but that never worked out. But I will tell you that, and it was such a, for me personally, when we did with Ben and Melissa, what had happened after that, and I just might tell you that night when Ben and Melissa and the crew left, I was the last one out there. And I don't spend as much time out there anymore as I'd like to. It is a difficult trip, but that night after everybody left, I locked up the cabin for the property owner, made sure the lights were out. And a week later, the property owner let me know. He said, well, Tom, he said, I felt better the next day. I went out there. He said, you guys, I don't know, I thought you were out there, lad, but he goes, the lights were on and all the doors were open. And I assured him that, I said, well, you know me. I checked. I said, no, they were all locked and the lights were off when I left. And and it's a gated community, property, a ranch, 1,200 acres, dirt road to a gravel road to a pavement. And there's nobody else was in there. So there again, you had that poltergeist type of activity that occurred. And then after that, 4 weeks, I think it was after that, the family let me know that the gentleman, which was my friend, the property owner, Site 2 and 3 in Marley, had a stroke and passed away. And so we were looking forward to doing a lot more out there. And with Ben and Melissa and the group, we even had plans with that group to do a show out there. Of course, the family didn't want anybody else out there. They shut it down. They were afraid anybody else injured. And I agree with them. So except for me and a team member, there's nobody else access on that property. So then that night when that show ran with Ben and Melissa at 10:30 at night, the property owner called me of Site 1. And over the years, there had been a rivalry actually between the two property owners that, one said, no, more activity just happened at my place. No, it's happening more at my place. And the property owner Site 1 said, he said, Tom, I watched the show. I really liked it. I'd like to do something like that in my place. And so I said, well, are you sure you want to do this? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, I'll see what I can do. So just out of a fluke and a coincidence, well, I don't believe in coincidence, but I'm good friends with one of the producers at Skinwalker. And next season, they're starting a new show, another episode, another spinoff of Skinwalker. And they wanted to base part of it on Marley Woods. So I said, well, it's good timing. I think I can get you guys on there. And I think we can maybe do this. Mm-hmm. So I got back to the property owner and I said, well, good news. I think we can do a show out there. And like we did with Ben, only a different group, the Skinwalker people. And he said, oh, that'd be great, Tom. So I contacted the people and we made plans. And 2 weeks before we were out there, we're going to start shooting, the property owner called me back up and he said, Tom, it's all off. We can't do it. And I said, you realize I told these people to make plans. We were going to do this. And he's a great guy. Also, I will tell you, great man. And he said, I know, Tom, I'm sorry I put you in the spot, but I talked to the family. He said, we don't want anybody else out here. We don't want anybody hurt. And the family just decided that we don't want to do this. And I've got my own ideas what happened and the reasons, but so you can imagine the spot that put me in. I had to get back to these people within 2 weeks and I'm going to go out there and shoot, and that it was all off. So for right now, all plans are off to get out and do much more filming at Marley. But we have other avenues we're working on, the Moonshaft Project, and I'm working with people now and on the false flag scenario involving part of Marley. Mm-hmm. So that's where we are right now.
When you talk about the portals, tell me about that.
Yeah, the portal, we felt we had 3. One that was a constant that was very prolific and directional and pretty regular. And we knew the exact location. And this thing would appear as a bright light, orange, yellow light, almost like a burning in the woods at times. And I just might add, for anybody that's interested, I have a Marley Woods, Ted Phillips research page on Facebook and my own personal Facebook page. You can get any of this on. And I have a YouTube channel with several little movies. You can get on there and watch it free of charge. I have some imagery, some video of the objects we caught in the portals, structured craft, Ted Phillips' whole history from the very beginning, a lot of my history, a little movie on Marley Woods tells the whole story, a lot of photographs, and then I have the interview I did with Jacques Vallée when Ted Phillips passed away. I have his dedication to Ted, and I interviewed Jacques Vallée, and that's all on my YouTube page. You can watch that, and seeing the man Jacques Vallée speak about Marley, it doesn't get any better than that, I will tell you.
Absolutely. How do you know those how do you know that they're portals?
Besides us actually viewing things coming in and out of these, it had an energy mass that we measured that was unlike anything Ted had ever seen in his experience. And like Ted said, in his early days too, when he was after the structured craft, he said, Tom, if I'd have said portal back then in those days, I wish somebody would have just smacked me. But he came to believe this, and that's what he proved. And Ted was a scientific mind that went where the data led him. And he taught me to be that way also over the years. And that is what these things are. And we found out that, which explains a lot in ufology, they are very directional. One time Ted and I tried to get, we've seen this from the deck on site one. We had our own office. The property owner built Ted an office, 2-story structure with a deck. We've seen the light, the portal come on, and Ted and I were going to get to it. We drove to that exact location. We saw no artifact of the portal, the light at that point. And just as a fluke, I stepped on my brake light, and the property owner back on site one, which was viewing the portal or the light at that point, he said, "Well, Tom, you have to see it. I can see your brake lights right next to it." And we got out of the vehicle and we were on radio contact. We said, "We have nothing here. We can see no artifact of the light, the portal." So we learned at that time they're very directional, which explains so much again. But you know, we can go into the portal aspect of this and what we truly believe the phenomena is, and what Ted we believe we proved, and now this goes into a realm a lot of people aren't going to want to go into, but
okay, well, let's talk about it. We're good. I want to go into.
Okay. Well, I will tell you that a lot of the old timers and the people that live around the ranches, they developed a unique ability to perceive whenever the activity would start. They almost could predict this. And a lot of the old timers would go in their house, lock the doors, they wouldn't come out. They viewed this as all demonic.
Okay.
Now, there again, that's an area back when I was young, you know, I would have stayed away from. But I will tell you over the years, this all has that intelligence we believe coming through. And some people I worked with over the years, I will tell you that I absolutely believe that this intelligence and everything we're dealing here with, the paranormal, stems from the same place. And as the Native Americans called all this, they called them the tricksters. They will be whatever you want them to be or you're looking for. They will. Now, that doesn't mean when they come across and assume that shape that they're not a physical shape. They absolutely are when they take that form. As the skinwalkers at, Skinwalker Ranch, they've experienced all this. And we had that too in Marley. But this is an intelligence we're dealing with. The people out there believe it's demonic, and a lot of the researchers I've known, and here again, based on my background with Bruce Whitteman in St. Louis, Missouri, we had a gentleman involved with MUFON in the beginning, Reverend John Schroeder, which was a very good investigator and ufologist. And I learned a lot working with that man. I've had from a boy, I will say I grew up in a Catholic church. I fell away from it for years, and not thinking in a million years I'd be back going where I am with this. But as a young boy, I had a Franciscan friar, priest named Father Ildefonse, and some other people. And of course, I know of Father Malachi Martin.
Right.
I followed him. And there was another Dr. Arnold Murray and another gentleman, I can't speak his name, I wish I could, but who actually was a seminary student, that he came from a wealthy family. And he actually they sent him to Rome, and he actually knew ancient Hebrew, Koine Greek, and Aramaic. He spoke it fluently. And so when he worked as a seminary student, and this is how this all ties together, he worked in the Vatican. And of course, you've heard the stories of the catacombs under the Vatican with all the miles of I think they've got, something like 20 miles of catacomb and 55 miles of shelving of,
Right.
documents. And they had a problem with mold going in on that. And the gentleman I knew, actually, this is another connection from Bruce and I when MUFON and the people we worked in the government, that I will tell you, and there's a lot of people don't want this known, that our government still has branches that work very closely with the Vatican. So if I had to go to one place on earth to find out what's going on in the truth, I would go down with some of my friends in those catacombs, I will tell you. But they came away, and he had mentioned and told me things. And part of the false flag scenario I spoke of, he said, is documented there, and it's predicted, and it's absolutely going to happen. And that's the way disclosure is going to take place. So you can see the mindset over the years that I had to adjust to.
So, what do you think is the most active thing on the ranch, or is it, or on on the property, or is it just a whole bunch of stuff?
The most active on that, I will tell you that it is the intelligence that works either through cryptids or the phenomena, the light beam activity that Ted and I experienced personally. And here I hate to draw the analogy to Close Encounters again, but the scene in there with the beam of light that hit, the truck. Ted and Phillips and I had that. I was driving on site and coming back from site 2 and 3 on this road out there in the middle of nowhere. And I noticed a light beam coming up behind the vehicle. It overtook our vehicle and filled our vehicle with a pure, most intense white light I've ever seen. I remember looking in the air vents in my vehicle, looking down at the dirt in my air vents. And I asked Ted, I said, "Are you seeing this, Ted?" And he said, "Well, hell yes, I'm seeing this, Tom." And we both instinctively jumped out of the vehicle, which wasn't a wise thing to do. And we looked up. We did not see a structured craft at all. And I know a little bit about lighting. I don't know how you'd recreate this effect. We both seen the light retracted from the vehicle. It had a definite cutoff end, white, like a white. You're looking at the bottom of a white wall, sort of, and retract into a pinpoint, and like the old twisting reflex action of a camera. And it just went down to a pinpoint, and it was out like that. So Ted got sick that night from it, and I didn't that night. I had health effects from it, pretty severe health effects after that. So it is real, and it does happen. And the ranchers all told us about that effect, and they viewed that and had effects from that themselves. So, how do you explain that?
Very interesting. And my question is, because you guys obviously want to investigate this place, to get the answers. How is the family, how are the families able to live out there with all this going on?
They dealt with it over the years, and the one thing, the rancher Site 1, he doesn't actually live on the ranch anymore. He lives about 6 miles down the road now. He has for several years. And now the property owner and his family do live on Site 2 and 3, but they live on the far end of the property that have had really not much activity at all. And I will say that the rancher, the gentleman that passed away, he more or less isolated his family from going on that part of the ranch where the activity was. And they all kind of they didn't want to deal with it. So, and they raised cattle on the ranch. And so they all dealt with it, and the caretaker on Site 1, I will say, though, he's experienced so many things over the years. He won't come out. He's got a mobile home on the property he lives in, and the caretaker won't come out at night. So you might say, what good is a caretaker that won't come out at night? But He just can't deal with it anymore himself. And when you're out there, you have to be really call him or let him prior know that you're going to be coming up to his trailer, because if he's awake at night, or even if he's asleep, if something, if you go up and knock on his door or anything to that degree, he's just liable to shoot through the door. He's so paranoid. So, but he's the only one that actually lives in the hot spot, you might say. But it's his home, over the years, and he just doesn't go out at night. So it's.
Well, the question in all this too is, obviously people get sick on the property, like you were saying, but has anybody ever gotten physically, attacked or anything like that?
Not physically attacked. It's always been the byproduct of what Ted and I felt was microwave energy. Now, okay. Ted got sick that night after we had that experience. He vomited, and I felt lucky at the time. In hindsight, I wished I'd have had that. I ended up, and it sounds very strange, but I can document everything and have. I went home after a week from that trip, and I started having a burning sensation on my scalp. I couldn't touch my head, and the local doctor tested me for shingles. It wasn't shingles. He even had me on pretty strong opiates for pain, and finally it just went away. But I will tell you that at the time, and I can document this, whether I took photos of myself, Ted did, and I have, I had dark brown hair, and over a period of a month or a little more, my hair turned from dark brown to what you see today, which at times is white or light blonde. Mm-hmm. I had eye troubles. I had a thing called macular cyst, which is beyond cataracts. I had operations for macular cyst and cataracts removed from my eyes. So, and to this day, my vision changes. I drive my local eye doctor crazy. Prescriptions one day, my eyes are normal one day. The next week or two, they're terrible. I can't really read or see anything. So that exists to this day. My eyes are always changing. So it has, and Ted, we more or less proved that it was all due to microwave energy. So that is the problem.
Okay. Well, it just strikes me because if it is alien stuff happening, that makes sense though, because there's so many reports of people seeing aliens walk through walls and all this other stuff, and they've got to have some type of machine to make them do that, and the machine has to just manipulate something to, like you say, microwaves or whatever waves they're using to be able to do that stuff.
Right. And, you're so right, because now we're dealing, you've heard of the Havana syndrome, mm-hmm. and that's due in the microwave, what they call microwave auditory effect, which is real. It's real. We've had it used against our state people in other countries, Cuba, and a lot of damage done from that. And they found that out back in World War II, that some of the technicians working with high gain radar, these technicians, if they didn't get out of the way of this, sometimes they started hearing voices. And I know you've probably seen where they can actually transmit voices into people's cranium, or actually into their head, that they hear. Now you can imagine what you could do with that tool. But yep. That was actually accidentally found from radar technicians that were out in the field in World War II, and they start hearing voices from the control room. And they said, well, you can't be hearing what we're saying. And they actually were being transmitted by microwave and carried, so as a carrier wave. So, we're just coming up on that technology now. But there again, the intelligence that has this, it comes across with this. They have these capabilities. So it's a real phenomenon, and it is. I encourage everybody that wants to go out and investigate these places like this, always have in the back of your mind that there is an element of risk with this. If you get in a real situation, it's no joke, and you can be affected by this.
Mm-hmm. Another question I was thinking is, do these the lights that you talk about? Have people seen them, like if they were on a road parallel to the ranch or anything? Can people see them that way? Kind of like the Marfa lights?
No, it's now the light balls they do. That's seen around this area. Various light balls. The light beam hasn't been. It's just locked in these two ranches for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason. The light balls can be seen at times close proximity to the ranches, like those lights, and those the light balls gets into a whole science. I can tell you that Ted learned when he was overseas for Alan Hynek. Believe me. The color of the light balls, the lights can denote, the blue, the white, even the yellow to a degree are the more benign. When you get into the red light balls, they're the one that has the most energy potential, and they're the ones that Ted found that they are the ones that do the harm all the time. And they were a precursor in Marley to the unseen force, which was very destructive on the ranch. Like I said, knocked down steel gates, uh, trees, and Ted experienced that overseas where the red light balls could do the most damage. So there's a whole science to light balls, I will tell you, and it gets so involved. You get in the light balls. Ted always felt, and the lights. He felt that was a technology that evolved to lower the risk factor from the days of the structured craft. That Ted loved to do. And we had that in Marley Woods too. I will tell you, we had structured craft out there. But Ted always felt that they lowered the risk factor as our technology increased. They lowered the risk factor using the light balls and as sort of a form of ROV. If you got a structured craft, you can track it sometimes. You can get pieces off it, residue. When you're dealing with a light ball, you've got nothing. When it's gone, it's gone. So Ted always felt that was the explanation why it's morphed into more now light ball activity than structured craft. But there is still structured craft.
All right, let me ask you about the structured craft. How do you know they're there? Have you seen them, or how that work?
Yeah, the property owners have had now. I only had one experience where I've seen a brief instant of structured craft. Ted had seen it, disc out there, two different size ones. The property owners had experiences with, here again, and this is, if I'm sure you're familiar with the subject matter, you've heard of these large, very large, cylindrical, black, more or less tank shapes. Some are denoted now, the white ones as Tic Tacs, but we've had them out there, estimation 150 foot in length, circular black rows of windows illuminated from internally, yellow lights. And in all Ted's years, it was the only place he had ever been logged. Witnesses had seen the light balls coming in and out of one of the end of these cylindrical UFOs. So we have the classic disc out at Marley. We have the black cylindrical ones, and there are a couple other odd, and then again the cryptid activity, just you name it, we've had it out there, and so it still occurs, but not as frequent as the light ball and the portals, I will say.
What a fascinating place! I would love to get out to some place like that to investigate.
Yeah, I'll tell you, everybody, and there again, Ted kept the place. We felt it to the property owners to keep a location. The eyewitnesses, and Ted had over 200 eyewitnesses that lived in the area. And believe me, they didn't want, and there again, at what purpose could these people have if they made this up? They don't want financial gain. They don't want their name used. They don't even want to be, except for us, they don't want to talk to anybody. And Ted promised them that we would always keep their location, their names completely secret. And the property owners, we felt we owed it to them. And so, we just, it we just feel that that's the least we can do for these people. So, and I will tell you that over the years, there's been people tried to get out there. A few people found a location. They have no knowledge of where the hot spots are. It's fenced and gated in. They'll be trespassing. And if they do get on the property, their chances of getting to the hot spots or the areas is very slim. They might see something, but, respect these ranchers' wishes and just, and they have had people arrested out there that got onto the place. I mean, the property owner, Site 2 and 3, actually had people pitching their tents in the middle of a herd of cattle, and he was concerned they were going to get killed out there. And at one point, he went out one morning and they left all their gear. I guess they had a bad run-in with the livestock out there. And so I urge people, our plan was always to have a series of trail cams or cellular cams, a network on our website, and anybody could go there 24 hours a day and actually help us out, watch for anything going on and report it, log it on the website. And we were almost going to had that arranged when we had our website up. Of course, we worked with people that required we took our website down, which was unfortunate. But anyway, that that's why we just felt we owed it to these people to do it like that.
Do you think you'll ever get a chance to get back on there?
I myself, and one or two other team members, we're allowed, they were kind of like a family over the years we developed with one another, but they just don't want to bring any strangers on there now because as the original owners of Skinwalker had found out, and the new current owner of Skinwalker, the two things that triggered bad activity back then, even on Skinwalker, was if you watch the show, that when they dig in the ground or dig in the earth or disturb anything, that sets it off. And bringing strangers on there also does, like Marley. And so the ranchers don't want to stir up anything, that they can't handle again. So, so that's the purpose for that. And believe me, I worked years to get people on there to get this presence to film. But Ben and Melissa were lucky they got on there. We did that. And in the future, I hope we can to some degree. We're working on that, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah.
What's next for you?
Well, like I said, I'm working with actually some good friends of mine, some theologians. We're working on the false flag scenario. We're trying to put a documentary together on that to warn people that, and this gets in a lot to the religious aspect of this, and I always say, whether you're an atheist or a religious person or not, there's information here that's important. And, and it even gets into an individual we worked with had known Rod Serling. And I don't know if you've ever heard of he did a documentary called UFOs It Has Begun. I don't know if you've ever caught that. It's an excellent, I urge people to get that and watch it. He, along with other people, have been promised film footage from the government. He started producing that show. Of course, like always, the government backed out. He went along and did that show. Burgess Meredith is on that and narrates it with him. And it's an excellent documentary in ufology, the real thing. He went as far as he could with that. Now, as far as the false flag scenario goes, the people that knew him, if you remember Twilight Zone, he did an episode on there called To Serve Man. I don't know if you remember that one.
I don't know. Describe it.
It actually entailed, what that was his way of putting his thumb in the government's eye for backing out with him. And that was the false flag scenario exactly. It was the episode where an alien presence came to Earth and they had a language they couldn't decipher, but the aliens promised mankind, they gave them free energy, increased food production, medicine, everything. And at the end of the movie, they said they were here to serve man. And what had happened was the scientist on that was getting on the ship to leave for vacation on their planet. And his assistant comes running at the end of the show. She deciphered their book they gave him to serve man. And she yells at the scientist. She said, the serve man is a cookbook. Now, I'm not saying that is their intent and purposes at all, but I will tell you that everybody I worked with, and I was friends at one point with Dr. Carol Rosen, which was von Braun's assistant, and Werner von Braun was the father of our rocketry. Dr. Carol Rosen did lectures on von Braun warned of the false flag scenario, which exactly was that at one point there was going to be an alien presence come to Earth to benefit mankind, and they would have technologies to give man. And believe me, our welfare is not their motivation for what they're going to do. And so I always tell people and I truly believe that we're not far from that event now. And they all warned when mankind is at its worst, they're going to come and they're going to have all the answers and technologies to save mankind. And I like to just put that thought out in people's mind. If you just question this, don't take everything that happens as gospel or truth. Their motivation is not our welfare and to help us out. It's more or less it'll be a structure where we work for them. And so I will tell you that this goes into theologians I've worked with, and I'm working with now some yet, and trying to do a documentary on this again. Mm-hmm. And it's extremely touchy subject matter. And I will tell you, to this day, it's not without an element of risk. I'm glad our show came on tonight, and I spoke about this. Several people in the last couple of months I've worked with had internet problems as you were experiencing. I've had my phone lines taken out twice and computer problems. So this is not a subject matter that is not, it doesn't go without an element of risk, I will tell you. But I'm working on that with people, and I'm still trying to do part of Ted Phillips' research, a project named Project Moonshaft that he was involved in Slovakia. And I don't know if you've ever heard about that at all.
No, tell me.
I'll encapsulate this very briefly.
Sure.
And I'm shrinking down volumes of material into this, so forgive me if I don't do it justice, which I won't. But Project Moonshaft involved in this again. Ted got involved with this with Alan Hynek. There was a man named Anton Horak, which was a Czech mining engineer that escaped from the Nazis in World War II and came to the United States. His family owned in Slovakia a uranium mine and mines, and came from a very wealthy family. And when World War II started, the Nazis took possession of his family holdings in his estate. They lived in virtually a castle. They took over the property, and he escaped. He joined the underground and fought the Nazis. He was captured along with two of his men. He escaped again from them. They were wounded, they were shot, and they made it to a very mountainous area in Slovakia. And a sheep herder named Slovik found them, hid them in a cave there, which to this day, for whatever reason, in Slovakia, it's against the law to explore caves, which I think I understand the purpose. But he was a mining engineer. He spoke 3 languages. He knew machinery. He knew natural geological formations. While they were hid in this cave, in the mouth of this cave for days, he explored the cave, Father, and which the sheep herder told him not to do. He said it was haunted. But he got in the cave. In one part of the cave opened up, he found a huge black cylindrical crescent-shaped object, which there's where the name Moon Shaft came from. It was shaped like a crescent moon.
Mhm.
It had a crack in it, a fissure. He had to remove most of his clothing to slip through this crack in this artifact. And he got in there, and several days he went back in there. He dug into the floor of this object, several feet of debris. He found fossilized or actual cave bear teeth. And there were stalagmites, stalactites growing on the outside of this man-made, or not man-made, but this instrumentality that's there. Shouldn't have been there in this cave, no explanation. And as he dug down into the bottom remnants and the debris in the cave, he did several feet. When he got almost to the bottom of this, it got a powdery substance, and it was light, and it blew up. The dirt blew up in his face with the warm air. He found a 1-inch metal grid pattern in the bottom of this, and the man knew machinery, geology. He put his ear down to this grid, and he described what he could hear as heavy turbines running deep below. Now, this makes absolutely no sense. Anyway, he got back to his men at that point. The sheep herder came, got him, and his one man had actually died in the cave mouth, and they buried him. Several feet of bloody bandages in the cave mouth, which that comes into play with Ted Phillips. I'll explain. But they got out of the cave. He escaped, came to the United States, and this story got to Ted, and of course Hynek and Alan said that, we got to move on this. We got to try to find this cave. And Ted actually made 2 trips back to this cave. He found the bandages in the mouth of the cave. They couldn't get all the way back to the artifact because the Nazis had carpet bombed this area for prisoners at that time. There was a collapse in the cave, and Ted was going to go back on the 3rd trip. They were going to get the money and resources to excavate this, to get in there further. And then the Russians invaded this area back then. The geopolitical climate turned, and Ted barely got out. The Russians almost caught him his last trip out, so he couldn't go back in. So years later, that was Ted's second project we were working on through the years, through 2001 all the way up to, I'd say, 2000, probably 7 and 8. We were getting the funding to go back, and had a lot of promises, and it looked good, and some of it fell through. So we were working on getting the funding, and I, of course, got into this with Ben Hansen and another group. We were very close in going back there to start this process again. And what happens now? A war breaks out in that area, and the Russians are involved again in that area. So, and I'm still in touch with the people there. And so I hope at some point it'll be doable again. But, and I will tell you, this story involves Adolf Hitler was looking for this object. The Russians were looking for this object. And there's a whole backstory of how they found out about it and what the true purpose of this, we believe, is. And Ted found out over the years, there's actually 6 more of these objects that have been found now all over the world. And we actually believe that this technology that's self-maintaining, and over all these years, we believe the purpose, and we actually think that this technology is going to come into play at the end with a false flag scenario that I spoke of. So that's just some of the projects we've been involved in.
Well, you're busy. Well, you know what? We'll just have to get you back on to talk more about that one.
Oh yeah. Ted always said it's the best. It's the greatest story never told, and it involves the family of Anton Horak. Madame Curie actually bought her first uranium from his family, and the whole backstory there, and the Nazi, the pedigree with Adolf Hitler in this area himself, looking for this object. It just, I will tell you, it's just a phenomenal story. You could never, in the man's own writings, Anton Hurek. I've seen Ted had part of his journal, original written journal, and some of his original drawings. I will tell you that I just have one I always have here. This is actually his own drawing out of his diary of the moonshaft object there, with a fissure at the bottom.
Wow.
So, and the man drew this himself in the cave. So it's the greatest story never told, and it could fill volumes, believe me.
Well, we'll absolutely have to get you back on. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
All right. Well, sir, you have a great Thanksgiving.
You too.
And thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And I always leave people just with this bit of advice. They always ask me, if I had one piece of advice, what would it be? And it just question everything, and just know that you have the authority to be on this side, and what comes across doesn't, and that gives you power over what comes across. So just remember that.
How can people find you?
My YouTube channel, just Google my name or go to YouTube and put my name in, and you'll get my channel up there. And I got all free movies there, quite a few movies. You can see Ted's early years. A little documentary was put together in black and white on Ted years ago in his early years. And Moonshaft, I got one there on the history of Moonshaft and Marley Woods, and some footage of the objects. So you can view all these free of charge.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much. And I really appreciate you coming on. And again, have a great holiday. And I will be in touch to get you back on, because I want to hear about Moonshaft.
That would be great.
Okay, sir. All right. Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Okay, that was a great show. Boy, did I learn a lot. I hope you guys did too. He's a fantastic guest to have on. Tomorrow, of course, I won't be here. It's Thanksgiving. You guys probably won't be here, but there's still a show. All right? It's going to be on YouTube, over at the YouTube channel, 6:30 p.m. And it's Mr. Steve Aspen is going to be on, and he was abducted by aliens when he was very young. And then he had multiple abductions, and that spurred him to do alien abduction research. And some of the stuff he's found out is really, really eye-opening, and I think you guys will like what he has to say and find it very interesting. So that will be tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Head over to the YouTube site at youtube.com/@CaliforniaHauntsRadio, and that will get you to the page to where it's going to premiere at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow. Okay, Pacific. So that'll be tomorrow's show. Now, for everybody watching, if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. We are equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. And if you're watching from Facebook, again, I'm going to remind you guys real quick, and you enjoy what you see, please hit that follow button and the like button to let me know. And if you're watching from YouTube, please be sure to click on the little ghost, the little ghost in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. That will pop up the little red subscribe button, and you can subscribe to our shows. We have more than 450 shows over there. And yeah, and there are different topics. I'm a journalist. I don't like to do the same topics all the time. So I'm varying topics. You'll see, I even interviewed the attorney who defended John Wayne Gacy. How's that grab you? So I've got all that going on over there. So check out the YouTube site, and I'm sure you'll find something that you like. Anyway, I will be back live on Friday, and that will be, of course, Medium Nancy Matz will be with us. It's our casual Fridays. So she's always got some really cool stuff to say. And that'll be at 6:30 p.m. as well. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. It's Thanksgiving Eve. Don't eat too much tomorrow, and enjoy those parades. So I will see you, and here's some contact information for Thomas. Websites: Marley Woods Facebook group, and facebook.com/Thomas.M. Ferrario. Okay? And there's a dot after the M. All right, guys, I will see you live Friday, but I will probably be in the chat room tomorrow, recovering from eating all that food, right? Like everybody else, be like a whale on the couch, watching TV. And so I can watch the show and talk to you guys. So I will be in the chat room tomorrow. Also, A quick note is that I'm going to start up a Discord, and Discord is a chat room where we can go to after the fact on these shows, and you can say anything you want. You don't have to be monitored by anybody. Isn't that cool? Yeah. So I'll let you know the details about the Discord room, and you can join. It's all free to join Discord. All right, I will see you guys on Friday Live. Have a good one.